if you're getting, if you're immediately after college, or if in your first job, whatever your first job is, if you're getting paid the same amount which your dad earned at the time of retirement, then you will also have the same stress, okay, which your dad had at 60 years, the same stress you will have at this age. That is true, isn't it? So earlier generations, they used to earn so much around the 50 or 60 years when they're about to retire. That time only they used to get a income of 1 lakh or 2 lakh or 3 lakh, like that. But nowadays you can find freshers out of college, just out of engineering, just out of MBA, they get that amount in their very first job. In the very first job, they are able to earn, they are getting a very good package wherein they earn around 1 or 2 lakh or 3 lakh per month, which their parents would have earned at the time of retirement. So obviously, if somebody is paying you so much for a job, you will have so much of stress also. You will have so much of work pressure also. Isn't it? That is true. So what happens, invariably, you get a lot of lifestyle related diseases also. So it is not just because of our stress alone. So there are various factors which play a role in diabetes. So it is our genetics also. So if our family has a history of diabetes, so if your grandparents have diabetes, if your parents have diabetes, then there is a possibility of you getting diabetes at a very young age. Okay, so in those cases, what people can do is they can have a healthy lifestyle so that they can delay the onset of diabetes. I'm not saying that you can completely stop yourself from getting diabetes. At least by following a healthy lifestyle and active lifestyle, you can at least delay the onset of getting diabetes. So genetics is also a reason, and then along with that, stress factors, okay, lifestyle, the food which we eat, that is a major contributing factor, isn't it? So most of the time we eat junk food and all these processed foods, quick foods. Anytime we feel sad or we feel bored, not even sad, if we are bored, we just take our mobile, we'll log into Zomato or Swiggy or whatever, and we order food and it comes to our doorstep, we eat it, right? So these kind of lifestyles are again responsible for the early onset of diabetes in younger population. So here, what is diabetes? So there is a hormone called as insulin, which is secreted by the pancreas. That is, there are the cells of islet of Langerhans. So these cells are the pancreas which is responsible for secreting a hormone called as insulin. So hormone insulin is very much responsible for breakdown of glucose in our body. So when when the pancreas is unable to secrete sufficient amounts of insulin, what will happen? There will be accumulation of sugar or accumulation of glucose in our blood. So insulin is not secreted properly by the pancreas, because of which there is very less insulin and it is not breaking down the glucose in our blood, as a result of which the glucose levels in our blood increase. Okay, so that is called as diabetes. Okay, so when you go for diabetes test also, they will ask you to do a test before food, after food, isn't it? So once you have to go give your blood and urine sample for checkup, and then they will ask you to have breakfast, and then after 2 hours after consuming breakfast, once again they will ask you to give the samples, isn't it? So that's called as postprandial something. Okay, right. So again, in diabetes, we have different types of diabetes, isn't it? We have type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. We have type 1 diabetes. So type 1 diabetes is the diabetes which children get. So in some cases, children get diabetes at a very young age, say by 1 year, 2 year, okay, or even by 5 years. That is called as type 1 diabetes, which is found usually among children and adolescents. And here what happens is there is very, very less insulin production by the pancreas. This kind of diabetes is called as type 1 diabetes. That is, which mostly occurs in children and adolescents. And then we have the type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is the one which occurs in the elderly population, isn't it? So after 50 years of age, after 60 years of age, or even after 40 years of age, the elderly population get diabetes. That is called as type 2 diabetes. And 90% of the diabetes cases in our country or anywhere, 90% of the cases will belong to type 2 only. And type 1 is very rare. It does not occur very commonly in children, very rarely. Suppose there is a family history of diabetes, or like that, then the kids will get the diabetes at a very young age, but it is very rare. However, type 2 diabetes, around 90% of the people who get diabetes are having type 2 diabetes. And again, the type 2 diabetes happens during the gestation period also, that is in pregnant ladies, right? So 10 months when they are carrying, during that time they get diabetes. That is called as gestational diabetes. Have you heard of this? Gestational diabetes, which occurs during pregnancy. Fine. So in a type 2 diabetes, what happens is either the pancreas will be producing less insulin, or even when the body is producing a sufficient amount of insulin, even when the pancreas is producing sufficient amount of insulin, the body is not capable of utilizing it. That is what happens in type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes. Okay. So we all know about common symptoms of diabetes, right? Frequent urination, tiredness, giddiness. So all these things, and if they get any wounds, it will not get healed very quickly. Okay, so when you go consult the doctor, they will ask you to go for all the tests. Then when they, based on the reading, that is how much sugar is there, sugar levels are there. So either they will prescribe tablets for diabetes, or they will ask you to go for some, what is that? They will ask you to take some insulin injections. So insulin injections usually they prescribe when the diabetes, when the glucose level crosses around about 300 or so. Otherwise, if it is very less, they usually doctors will ask you to go for tablets and so on. So next again, cardiovascular diseases, right, like heart attack and many other cardiovascular diseases. That is also a lifestyle related disease only. And hypertension. So what is the normal level of BP, blood sugar, which we should have? It is 190 by 190? No, 120 by 90. This is the normal blood sugar level, normal blood pressure level, right? So this is the normal blood pressure found in normal people. So it is 120 by 90. So if you have a blood pressure higher than this, that is higher than this reading, then it is called as hypertension or high BP, as we call it in common terms, right? So if it is lower than this, then it is called as hypotension or low BP, right? So usually elderly population will have hypertension. So again there they will using a sphygmomanometer, they will check the readings, and if they have a hypertension, they will prescribe them tablets for that. And in case of hypotension, there's no actually proper medication for hypertension. So usually doctors will suggest you to have an active lifestyle, eat well, take sufficient quantities of juices, fruit juices containing salt, sugar and everything. So usually they prescribe these things for hypertension. So there's no medication as such, but for hypertension they will prescribe tablets. 120 by 80, sorry. 1 minute, it's not 120 by 90. I get confused with numbers. No matter how many times I keep reminding, numbers don't stay in my head. That is why I don't remember history dates also. Oh God. Dates, numbers is a huge difficulty for me. Yeah, 120 by 80 is the normal BP value. Okay, it is not 120 by 90, it is 120 by 80. Fine? Good. Okay. Next, moving on to heart diseases. So we all know so much about heart diseases, right? So recently what happened here in Bangalore was a popular Kannada actor called Puneet Rajkumar. He died out of a heart attack suddenly, all of a sudden. So morning he just woke up. Until the previous day he was very active. He went for a promotional event to promote one of his brother's movie, and he had attended a party of a close friend. Everything, he was pretty normal. He had a very healthy lifestyle and he was a very fit person. He did not have any ailments earlier. And that morning when he woke up and he was working out, he felt a sudden pain in the chest, and he was taken to a nearby clinic where the doctor examined him and asked him to rush to a hospital. and further after taking him to the hospital also, he could not, within few minutes or hours, he died. So this created so much of panic among the population here in Bangalore and Karnataka especially. People started rushing towards hospitals for no reason. They, next day, I know few doctors who told me that the next day after his death, the cardiovascular department, that is the heart department, was overcrowded and it was flooded. Even in hospitals, government hospital, they said that people in cardiology department had to attend to at least 500 and 600 cases on a single day. Okay, imagine a doctor who has to attend 500 to 600 cases in a single day, and it was not like everybody all of a sudden got heart disease. It is the panic of the situation which created that. So people started, all of a sudden they started coming to the doctors and getting the ECG done, getting that. Another test is there, right? What is that? They run on the treadmill test. They call some, I don't know what exactly they call that. They ask you to run on the treadmill and they do the recording. Then they do ECG and further tests and all. So even very young people who did not have any problems, heart problems and all, simply they started feeling that they are having some chest pain. Even if they didn't have any disease, they wanted to confirm that they are all right, that they don't go through what happened to Puneet Rajkumar. And even from that time also, I even read few articles in the newspaper saying that there has been a huge rush for tests related to heart. So whatever heart tests have been doing, so all the hospitals are facing large amount of rush from people to get themselves tested so that nothing like that happens. So beyond everything, panic hurts people a lot, isn't it? Panic and fear. And that was also the reason why many people died during this 2 years during COVID, out of panic and fear itself. Even though they didn't get COVID, right? The just feeling of staying at home, they could not go out, they could not socialize. That itself created a lot of tension for people, especially the elderly population. Okay, for them, earlier they had a very casual lifestyle where they used to go out, meet senior citizens of their own age. Either they used to go to parks or even in apartment complex in common places they used to gather. They used to sit, talk about politics and whatnot. Right, elders, you can see they would talk about politics and other things. They relax and they used to come back home, watch TV for some time. So they had a kind of relaxed lifestyle. But during the lockdown phase, they were completely put inside a cage of 4 walls inside the house, and that created a lot of health hazards. Many people started getting more and more heart diseases. Some people started getting hypertension, BP, and they used to sit and watch all the news channels showing how severe the disease is, how many people are dying, all this. See, once or twice you can ignore it, but continuously you see this negative news every single day in and day out, it definitely affects the psychology, isn't it? How many of you all can relate with me? It's not just me, I've heard many people tell this. After a point of time, even I stopped watching all this newses. Newses. It's not newses, it's news. So during the first wave, first day, second day, third day, everybody was curious to know what is COVID, where it has started, how many people have got, why have they, imposed a lockdown, so what are the precautions we need to take, why everything. But after some time, when more and more such same news 24/7 in every single channel, when you keep watching it repeatedly, you see the misery, deaths, people sufferings and all. It's somewhat kind of too much of negativity to handle, and it has also led to a lot of psychological problems also in many people. So I even was hearing to a podcast. In European countries also, how the psychological cases increased exclusively during this COVID period. Okay, and not just that, even even for women also, harassment at home, all this also increased. Not just in our country, we'll think only it happens in India, not like that. So even in Western countries, even in European countries, more harassment on women and more psychological problems, all of these increased during this COVID period. Fortunately, now at least we do not have lockdown and we are kind of little bit able to relax going out. And now they have started this Omicron. Let's wish that COVID just ends within few days or maximum few months. We cannot go on like this anymore. Enough, it's enough. Fine. Next, osteoporosis. So osteoporosis, again, this is an age-dependent disorder with loss of normal density of the bone. So you must have watched this advertisement, right, for women Horlicks. So there one person will come and tell, see, after 30 years of age, For in women, usually the bone density will start reducing. So if you drink women's Horlicks, your bone density will be maintained, and you will have a healthy life, healthy bones, and you can live healthily, all that. But even I used to, sometimes even doctors advise me also to take this women's Horlicks. I have bought few bottles, and hesitatingly, though I hate the taste of that, I have had few bottles of women's Horlicks. But ultimately, if you see what are the ingredients that are going into this, mostly it is malt and sugar. So even in Horlicks, Boost, whatever you take, okay, the major ingredients are this malt and sugar. So invariably, again, they are making us consume sugar, 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 and not much nutrient-rich food. Right? So the other nutrients which they are so much highlighting in the advertisement, right, that will be in very meager quantities, whereas majority of what goes into that is malt and sugar. Okay, so you are just taking in more and more sugar. Fine. So here in osteoporosis, the bones become fragile and they are easily fractured. So as you age, the bone density becomes reducing, and you become more and more susceptible to breakage or fracture and so on. That is why many times you can find that in home, elderly population, even just a small fall, they will get a fracture. Isn't it? Whereas when we are young, no matter how many ever times we fall, we jump, we whatnot we do, we don't get fractures very easily, except few times. But we don't break our bones so easily, right? Even if you have a bike accident and all, still we can, even if you get a fracture, the recovery will be very fast, right? So in your teenage, how many of you have broken your bones, either in bike accidents or during playing sports and everything? So even if you break your bone, if you have a fracture also, within few days or few months, it will recover. But in old age people, so if they fall and if they break their bones, even after replacement surgery and everything, it takes a very long time for them to heal, isn't it? That is because their bones are very fragile. Then cancer. So cancer has become so common nowadays that so many people we have been hearing as with suffering from cancer. So it's like almost every other family has a person suffering from cancer, some kind of cancer, adrenal cancer, pancreatic cancer, gallbladder, breast cancer, blood cancer, brain tumor. So many cancer cases nowadays. So that was not the case, at least even in 90s and all. Where are we going wrong? If we cannot even really identify what exactly is the reason. Every single thing which we can consider, right? Be it the mobile phones which we are using, we are taking so much of radiation, right? The towers, mobile towers. So we are living in areas where we are surrounded by these mobile towers, which is giving out so much of radiation. And the food which we consume, there are so many carcinogens in that. And again, the lifestyle. Okay, so there are many factors which are responsible for producing, cancer in so many patients. Then again, we have two kinds of tumors, that is benign tumor and malignant tumor. So benign tumor is confined to the place of origin and it does not spread to other body parts. Okay, so it is relatively harmless. So sometimes they will identify a tumor and they will remove it. Say in some part of the body, the tumor is there. And if it is benign in nature, so they will take a sample and they will send it for autopsy. So autopsy tests, right? So when they send it for autopsy, they will get to know whether it is a benign tumor or a malignant tumor. And if it is benign, the doctor will advise you to go for a surgery. So wherever that tumor is present, they will remove that, and they will conduct a surgery. So it is relatively harmless. Just you have to undergo a surgery. Whereas malignant tumor means it originates in one place and it continuously spreads to all other organs of the body throughout the body. Okay. So what happens is many a times when we identify the cancer patient in the stage 4, by then the cancer would have spread to different parts of the body, and that is why it becomes difficult to treat them. Okay. So in the initial stages, it will be located in only one place. Okay, so that time we have various options. We can either go for surgery or chemotherapy or various other options using which we can contain the disease. But what happens when it progresses to stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4? By then it has already spread through multiple places, locations in the body, and at that time surgery is not a possibility. And even if you give chemotherapy, it creates too much of the patient won't be in a condition to tolerate the chemotherapy treatment and tablets. So in that case, the doctor will either give two options. He'll say if you go for chemotherapy, the condition of the person will become very bad. They will be in the bedridden throughout. It becomes very difficult for them to tolerate the chemotherapy drugs and treatment. So they cannot be active. They will be fully bedridden and they will have a miserable life until whatever next few months or few years which they're going to live. Otherwise, they will give you the option of you just ignore that, don't go for any treatment. So until whatever how many months or years they're going to be alive, they can at least lead a relatively better life. That's very sad. Okay. Then moving on to nutrition. Oh, it's already time up.